everyone. Welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad. Tehami. Today's program, we are going to talk about how this particular conflict of Russia and Ukraine is unfolding, and especially when the fiasco at the Oval Office in the White House during the meeting between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Zelensky unfolded. We have seen after that particular meeting heated exchange of words between the two leaders. We have seen President Vladimir Zelensky going to the UK, and he's been getting a full unwavering backing and support by the leaders from the European countries. At the same time, there's been a reaction from Russia on this particular fiasco at the Oval Office at the White House. Now, this particular episode in the entire saga, how it is going to have an impact with that particular unwavering support that has come forth by the European leaders for President Vladimir Zelensky, and how is it going to impact the transatlantic Western alliance, particularly when we see President Donald Trump during his election campaign. He had been saying as soon as he takes office, he is going to end this particular war. A lot of strong words and statements were exchanged in that particular meeting between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Zelensky. We'll try to understand the origins of this particular conflict, the Ukraine crisis. It has unfolded over the last 3 years. What are the objectives Russia had at that particular time? How far those objectives have been achieved? This particular shift in the foreign policy of the United States of America under President Donald Trump's presidency, how it is going to affect the entire equation. To understand all this, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Mr. Khalid Taimur Akram. He's expert in international relations. Mr. Akram, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also on Skype at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Shahid M.G. Kiani, former ambassador. Mr. Kiani, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by another participant. As they join in, I'll be introducing them. Mr. Akram, if you allow me, let me begin the discussion with Mr. Kiani. Mr. Kiani, let's first of all specifically talk about that particular fiasco that unfolded at the Oval Office in the White House. Quite a heated exchange. Is it an incident of its own kind? Do you have you ever seen such sort of a thing happening before? And where the things do you think go wrong in that particular meeting?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on this show. Meaning, in my 34 years of diplomatic service, as they say, diplomatic practitioner, I have never seen such an incident in which your guest is that you not only a guest but a state guest, the head of state of a country with which the United States has all along been very supportive of its war against Russia, to berate him in front of not only a global audience. It was, I think, one cannot condone that. And in my opinion, President Trump was, what he was doing was showing the, as they say, the American, the new administration, Trump's administration, to what he is going to do with other countries with which the United States has doubts about the relationship. It's the domestic audience with which President Trump was pandering to, and he must have succeeded to a large extent. But one cannot condone such a thing, even if um, uh, the new administration headed by President Trump does not agree with what Ukraine is doing. There could have been many other ways of showing that, but to believe or not, this was berating him did not bring him many accolades from either from his own country or from the world, barring aside those who support President Trump's slogan of making America great again. So this, and how they are going to make it great again, this is something which we will all have to we'll all have to ponder over the next 3 to 4 years. The other thing
Mr.
is
Kiani,
which
please go ahead. Please go ahead. Please finish your thought.
no, what what I'm saying, maybe you might ask the next question, is that this is the United States. You're looking at the post 1945 period in which the United States went all out of the way to reconstruct the Western Europe, devastated by the Second World War, by the Marshall Plan. It has gone a long way from that to today, where you see the European countries getting together in London and talking about Ukraine and the war, in which you do not see any United States what you got represented by the United States. So this is something which we all have to ponder as to what is happening.
I'll come to this particular point. This is a very important point that I need your analysis on in detail. There's another question I want you to elaborate on that one as well. Before heading towards that question, let me bring in Mr. Akram into the discussion also. Mr. Akram, what's your understanding? What happened at the Oval Office? Do you think it is only because of that desire of President Donald Trump to end the war in Ukraine at the earliest? And he's also said that he had been in talks with President Putin, and he's during that particular heated exchange of words, he also said that President Vladimir Zelensky was risking a global a World War III. My question is, has this entire saga to only do with his desire of ending this war, or are there any other factors which were at play during that particular meeting?
Yes, this is very important question, that President Trump's frustration was not just because of his dress, or he wants to end the war or anything like that. We must see the historical perspective in this regard, that this new geographical world order in which we are living now, this was established after Second World War, and NATO was established in 1949, and then we saw the collapse of Soviet Union. So basically, in last 30 years, United States is turned into a very big military state, military industrial complex. And since President Trump is a pure businessman and he wants America back again in its old glory of industrialization, so he wants to end these kinds of war, he wants to end the conflicts. So I think there are a number of factors which has played, and which culminated on this pact which happened in Oval Office. So we should not be just looking at from one angle. There are, in my view, there are four angles. Number one, President Trump wants America back on the industrial track. He wants to stop spending the American money outside America, which is good. Again, he wants to have a good relationship with China and Russia and with other powers, so that he can have more American exports to these countries and he can generate more business. And the last is that his philosophy is doing business all over the world and not starting any other war. If we see his first term, during his first term, although he was quite novice in politics, but there was no war which he started. And unfortunately, since last 50 years, we have seen that any American president coming in office for 4 years or for 8 years, there are wars tags with them. There are war tags with Reagan, there are wars tags with Bill Clinton, there are war tags with Obama, and somebody went to war in Afghanistan, somebody went to war in Syria, somebody went to war in Iraq. So President Trump wants to finish off with this thing. So, but yes, I agree with him that the way President Zelensky was treated was not right. But ultimately, I think that in days to come, Europe and Ukraine has to come up to some sort of conclusion, because America, I view now, America under Trump will not be siding with any kind of war, and they will be doing business with the world. And I think this is good for bringing peace in the world. So it is not just Ukraine we are talking about. Tomorrow, President Trump has to play a role in bringing India to terms in terms of the Indian illegal occupation in occupied Kashmir. Right. And of course, the Gaza problem is still not resolved, and still there are problems going on in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. So President Trump has to, I think, with the next few months, if he is able to stop this war, then he will be able to concentrate in bringing peace in other parts of the world also.
I understand all of your points, as Mr. Kiani has also already shed light and said that he has never seen such type of treatment during his diplomatic service in the last over 30 years of his service. I mean, even if we agree that these are the objectives that you've just stated, so what sort of saga that happened in the Oval Office? What is that? Was there any sort of a justification for that at all when we try to analyze by the yardstick of the diplomatic norms?
As we know that President Trump has not been following diplomatic norms many times. If we saw during his first term, he was quite insolent with many of the heads of the states. He has never been following the diplomatic norms in any of his actions, even abroad or in US. And right now, President Trump is trying to make drastic changes within the US administration, and every day he needs a new story on media to sell out to the American public, because he's playing with the sentiments of the local domestic politics. So he, up till now, we have seen since last 3-4 weeks, we have seen that whatever executive orders he has been signing in public. I remember the first day, once he took oath, he went to the grand arena where there were lots of people, and he was signing all those executive orders. And every day he's coming on media. So right now what he's trying to do, because as if he's making lot of internal changes also within the American administration, so he needs to keep public with him. So he is, I would say, he's playing for the public and for the domestic audience. Whatever has happened in the Oval Office, it has more implications locally than internationally. And locally, if you see the analysis of various on various TV channels, most of the American public supported him. Although internationally, Europe has given him quite a bad response because Europe immediately he went
I'll
to
come to
UK.
this particular point. So you already talked of a prospect that he could use his good offices to intervene in the dispute over here in IIOJK and perhaps press India to go for achieving peace in the region as well. But even if he uses his good offices, do you expect him to follow the same suit as far as behavior at the Oval Office is concerned towards an Indian Prime Minister or the head of the state?
Not the same kind of treatment he's going to give to India, because as we know that in his cabinet there are a lot of Indian ethnic officials who are there now and who would constantly be advocating for India. But at the same time, just today the Indian Trade Minister, he has rushed to US to talk with the US administration, because they are expecting that Donald Trump next month, maybe in March or in April, he's going to announce different sorts of tariffs for India, because he has already told Modi that I'm going to announce the same tariffs as you are having for the American automobiles industry, because importing an American car in India is very expensive. So India is, from Trump, India is not expecting much, but yes, if Trump wants to finish off with all the wars in the world, and if all the possibilities of the war in the world, then he has to play a role in occupied Kashmir also. He has to tell India to take back Article 370 and 35A. He has to tell India that India should not be having a discrimination against the minorities within India. As you know, right now, most of the suppressed classes are in India and throughout the world. So he will be playing a role, but we have to see that when he is going to come towards this part of the world, when he is going to take up the matters of this part of the world, because for him right now there are two important issues. One is to stop this Ukraine war, because US has already spent more than 500 billion US dollars in the war, and of course NATO is a big white elephant, and Trump wants to get out of NATO. He will be curtailing the budget for NATO very soon. If you see the budget, if you see the NATO Secretary General's statement, he said that without America, NATO is just 50%. So he has to tell the Europe that no more fights, and NATO has to come down to a level, because NATO was not established to fight wars in Middle East or any other places. NATO was established just for a singular purpose. That purpose was resolved or dissolved in 1990s. That was Soviet Union. After that, the Americans kept NATO alive just to keep their hegemony alive on this region. But now, as Trump is shifting from the industrial state, the military industrial state, to the normal industry, so he wants to compete with China in the industry, he wants to compete with South Korea, he wants to compete with with India, with Bangladesh, with Pakistan, because all these countries are sending their exports to America. So for bringing up the American industry, like he said, the America first, so he has to cut down on these kinds of wars and these kinds of defense expenditures.
Right. Mr. Kiani, what's your understanding, before heading to that particular question, as we have seen that unwavering support expressed by the European leaders when they were gathered at a summit in the UK for President Vladimir Zelensky and Ukraine against Russia. The number of points which have been put forward by Mr. Akram as to the desire of President Donald Trump to end the war at the very first place, also improve relations with China and Russia at the same time, also doing business all over the world. First of all, your understanding regarding that, and do you consider any sort of a personal factors which were at play that you saw this unprecedented sort of saga that unfolded there at the Oval Office?
First of all, yeah, on this, I'd like to say something. My own experience is whenever state visits are planned in both the capitals, X and Y. For example, now I'll talk about this. There is electricity problem. Sorry. Let me state to you. What can I do? I'm sorry. There is an electricity problem. Can you see
We
me?
can partially see you, Mr. Kiani. Please go ahead.
My apologies for that. There is city problem. Let me just share with you. Whenever, for example, this state visit was being planned from the American ambassador sitting in Ukraine, talking to the host government, and there in Washington D.C., the Ukrainian ambassador talking to the State Department. Now, whenever such visits takes place, they are planned. They are planned much in advance. But here, for example, President Trump had himself said, "Oh, on Friday he's coming here." I think that visit should have been postponed, because behind the scenes, a lot of work is done, because you do not tell the head of state that more or less in a scale of 1 to 10, 8.5 things are told to him, and he gets a briefing from the host government, from his own
Mr.
government.
Kiani, I seek your pardon for the interjection over here. Unfortunately, we can't properly see you. Of course, it's a very important thing that you are shedding light on. In the meantime, I'll go to Mr. Akram. In the meantime, if I look forward to you to kindly change your position with your face facing towards light, please. Then we can come back to you and take your understanding regarding as to what you were speaking earlier. European leaders standing behind Vladimir Zelensky. The summit in the UK, what sort of a message has it sent to the US in particular?
Yes, Europeans are under threat. Europeans feel threat from Russia, but they are not going to the root of the problem. The root of the problem was that Russia just wanted that Ukraine should not become part of European Union or NATO. But then it escalated. But now I think the European leaders are in a state of paranoid, because they have in last almost 50-60 years, they have not been building up their defense industry, because their reliance on the American defense is too much. And now all of a sudden they see the shelter going out of their head, and so they are in a state of panic. But all of them are also responsible to their own taxpayers, to their own countrymen. And I'm sure that the kind of pledges which they are making to Ukraine, and the kind of pledges which they are making to him for starting the war, I'm sure that all of them are going to face a lot of backlash within their own countries. Because if you remember the Israel-Palestine war, we saw maximum number of Europeans getting out in support of the Palestinian people against the genocide, against the war. Basically, the European public is anti-war, and if their leaders are going to pursue Zelensky to continue with the war and not have a peace deal with Russia, then they are going to face a lot of backlash. And President Trump's narrative will get more popular not only in America but also in Europe also. So they have to play cool, they have to sit with America, whether they like it or they don't like it. America is now the backbone of their security. America is the backbone of their of NATO. America has been putting in lot of money for giving them not only the defense equipment but also sending their warships in the region. So if they back out, so I think the Europe is going to be in lot of trouble.
If Europeans press ahead with their plan and differ from what President Trump's policy is regarding this particular conflict, do you think they are going to sustain for a longer term, and what sort of support they can give to Ukraine, in what terms?
One, they can give money to Ukraine, but they are not in position to give Ukraine that kind of military equipment which America had been giving to them. France and UK and Germany partially, they have a defense industry, but it is not as modern as the American defense industry is. Two, they are not going to differ much from the Americans. They will be sitting with the America as the European Union, the President of the European Union, and also even the British Prime Minister had advised Zelensky to start again talking with the Americans. And we will see that Europe is going to play a positive role, especially I expect more from UK and Germany, although France may not play that due role which they have to, but Germany, Germany has got a lot of energy interest.
But the way the Europeans have backed, given that unwavering support to the Ukrainians, do we understand, do we see at this particular point in time, after that particular Oval Office meeting, the US getting isolated? And there seems to be a rift that seems to be widening in terms of its relationship with its NATO allies.
But US is not getting isolated. I don't see that US would get isolated, because if US adopt no war policy, then it suits China, it suits Russia. We have very recently seen Russia and China supporting US resolution in Security Council. So I don't see US getting isolated just by getting away from NATO. US will definitely, with these kind of policies of peace, US will definitely get support from China. And we must not forget, right now the Chinese government and the Chinese policies are the most followed policies in the world. 155 countries are member of China's Belt and Road program. All of them, they believe the shared community concept of the Chinese president. And if US adopts the same kind of policies, I'm sure that China will come up and China will support US. And very recently, just last week, we have seen in the UN Security Council that the European, they abstained from the vote, but China and Russia, they were there to support US. So I think US will not get isolated with these kinds of policies for peace. If they are for peace and if they are for genuinely for peace in the world, they will definitely get the support from China, and all the allies of China will definitely back US. But Then comes that is US really interested in peace? So this is a big question mark, and the true intentions of the US government will be seen very keenly by the world in next couple of weeks.
Right, Mr. Kiani, please go ahead with what you were saying already. With a further question, as you already elaborated regarding as to Europeans backing Vladimir Zelensky and expressing unwavering support for him and his cause against Russia. Please go ahead.
Let me just say to you, let me end this thing. I said what has happened is that the homework done by both the host governments, it takes time, and then the head of states are given, both head of states given a briefing as to what to expect. In a scale of 1 to 10, 8.5 is always correct. And this is what the head of state will expect from his what you call host. Now, here what has happened is, meaning I'm quite surprised that this visit could have been postponed for another 10, 15 days, doesn't matter. And in during that period, President Zelensky would have been convinced behind the scenes by senior people from the Americans, from the United States, telling him that, yes, look, what you're going to do is when you go and meet President Trump wants you to, allow him to mediate and end this war in a manner in which you will not be a loser. Meaning, what is going to happen is the United States, the new administration does not agree with this war going on globally. So this war has to end. We will play a role in which you will not be a loser. Now the thing is, President Zelensky, I don't know who told him, just took up about it, took an aircraft and reached United States. And then another thing is, which is I don't think it's a very major thing, in which about they talk about his dress. Well, let me be honest, he is in a war. He was in more or less in a war fatigue, and he came. I think that should have been ignored. But the fact is that the head of state of a country with which the previous US administration have been supporting all along, giving them financial, moral, and diplomatic support, to berate him in front of the public, I think was not correct. Nevertheless, one. Number two, I want to say to you is, when we talk of the
Relationship that Zelensky enjoyed with the previous administration?
had excellent, but the relationship with President Biden was excellent, and that is what he took it for granted, that when he goes to White House, he'll receive the same. I think he didn't do his homework. Neither his own government did the homework. He was not briefed properly. So I think this was done in a hurried manner, in the in which he was embarrassed. I don't think that is advisable. Second, what I could tell you is, when you talk about the summit which has taken place in United Kingdom today, but the end of it, what have you seen what it is? They say yes, okay, we will. This was, I think, I it was in my manner. It was playing to the gallery. All these 17 head of states who were there from Europe, they sat down together, and at the end of the day said, okay, we will put this peace proposal to the United States. So the end of the day, the Americans have the last word. So this is either English, and English say they're neither here, neither there. The Americans will have the big say. They know it. The Americans have a big say because of the rapport which President Trump has developed with Putin. And then the policy matter, they say that Americans, United States, and Russia will decide as to what is going to happen in Ukraine. You like it or not, this is a realist policy. In realism, these things happen. You have to take, you have to, meaning you have to accept it. This is what happens in the world. Not like a domestic policy in which there is a hierarchical here. Here there is in sort of a chaotic situation in which there is no order. But the order is by these two big powers. So this is something which we have to accept. So, and then last one thing more, when people talk about as to why Russia invaded Ukraine, I'll just give you one liner. The Americans after the Second World War decided that when NATO was formed, they said that the NATO will not encroach upon the territory closer to what the Soviet Union at that time was, and they wrote this agreement, a verbal agreement which was given to the Soviet leaders, and now you have most of the countries which were in the Warsaw Pact are now members of NATO. So the Russians who have decades of experience of having seen wars, you know, coming from these neighboring countries, Napoleon, and then the Germans entering their country. So they couldn't take it. I'm not trying to justify what Russia did, but what is happening is that when big powers give their verbal agreements or give an understanding, they should abide by it. This was this the war was coming. I think the all the analysts understood that sooner or later, because if you listen to this statement of President Zelensky says that if Ukraine becomes a member of NATO, I'll resign. I mean, what an aim and objective it is, and what a cost it has given to Ukraine. With half the population having fled the country, so many people have died, and and meaning bleeding, killing for what aim and objective? Become member of NATO, which is losing, which the according to the new U.S. administration losing in influence. So this is something which is um, not understandable.
Okay, so there is a statement. How do you look at this particular statement by Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov during his daily press call? Said the military operation in Ukraine will continue until all objectives are achieved.
Yes, this is exactly what it is. I
This
have
particular
all.
keeping this particular statement in view, and at the same time trying to analyze that particular desire of President Donald Trump to bring peace in this particular region by ending this particular war. How do you equate both of these?
If you look at the statement, look at the dialogue which went on between President Zelensky and President Trump and the White House, one should draw their own conclusions. The agreement, the war will end, but not on the terms of Ukraine. As I said to you, I'm not trying to support, but this is what is going to happen. The two areas, the Crimea and other areas which which the Russians have occupied, I doubt very much that they will vacate. Maybe some small portion they will vacate, but other ones they will keep. And Ukraine, unfortunately, they have wasted their time. They should have agreed to terms and conditions earlier, in which they would have their sovereignty would have been guaranteed. But here now the thing is, it is between the United States, President Trump and President Putin, to decide the fate of Ukraine. And these, again, I would say to you, the meeting in London between these states, I don't think it has any significance. I tell you frankly, man, I'm a realist. I tell you, it has no significance. Yes, they give him a support, but at the end of the day, who 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 decides? Not them. It is the Russia and United States will decide. It's unfortunate, but let's hope that this war ends and Ukraine gets some sort of a guarantee that the Russians will withdraw from major part of their country, and that it will not be invaded again. But again, as I say to you, the new leadership or Presidency will have to publicly state that they are no more interested in becoming member of NATO.
Right. So, what I understand from your take is, so it is the US president and Russian president who are going to call the shots, and that is going to matter at the end of the day. This particular summit by the European leaders to back Vladimir Zelensky holds no value in your understanding. So, in that particular case, so whatever, by looking at the previous statements of President Donald Trump that he has repeatedly talked of, that the borders are not going to be the same as they were pre-2014 as far as Ukraine is concerned. That is what you have said in your take right now. Also, what sort of impact it is going to have, this particular immediate backing and expression of support by the European leaders for Ukraine or Vladimir Zelensky, as far as Europe's relations with the United States of America under Donald Trump's presidency is concerned?
Tell you, the European leaders behind the scenes, I'm telling you now, the behind the scenes, this summit which has taken place, it's a good thing. They are together. They're giving a moral support to President Zelensky. And I have seen the president, French president, saying that the French and the British troops may be on, will go to Ukraine as peacekeepers. I doubt very much that will be acceptable to the Russians. Russians are against all Western boots on ground. Either peacekeepers or no peacekeeper, they will not like it. And as far as the guarantee is concerned, I think what is going to happen is that the Russians, in the discussion between President Putin and Trump or their advisors, and they will be discussing that that the war should end, and the terms and conditions should be such that it should satisfy to a large extent Ukrainian doubts and concerns and those of the Western countries, because what the European countries are fearful is that the Russians might, you know, today they invaded Ukraine, they may invade other countries, and I don't think that the Russians are in any manner trying to go beyond what they have done this time, and this is something which these because this world cannot expect cannot 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 afford another war like this. The Afghan war has ended, 2 decades of war, which which were neither here neither there. Here now you have Ukraine war. We have the Gaza war. It's I it more or less, not ended, but the big things, the big casualties are down now. So they want Ukraine because President Trump wants to focus on domestic issues like the improvement of infrastructure, the improvement in the lives of its own people, the health, education, and other things, the ending of crime, ending drugs and other things. So he cannot afford to focus on sending money to Ukraine, where where what has Ukrainian done? Has it been able to salvage its security? I doubt very much.
Right, Mr. Khan, I'll come back to you for one last very important question. Mr. Akram, when we talk about this particular statement by Dmitry Peskov that the military operation in Ukraine will continue until all objectives are achieved, comparing it with that particular desire of Donald Trump, the US president, of ending the war, how do you compare both of these? And also, when we talk about alleviating the security concerns of Ukraine, what sort of a role the European leaders at this particular point in time could play?
Yeah, I think the statements coming out of Moscow are just pressure tactics. President Putin is as much ready to end the war as Donald Trump is. They have both talked, and President Putin has also talked with President Xi Jinping of China. And whenever there is a consensus between the Donald Trump and Putin, the war will end. It is just the verbal things which are being said by the by the Russians right now, so that to put more pressure on Zelensky and also on the European leaders. As the ambassador Shahid had already said, that the European leaders right now are not in a position to isolate US and take a independent decision. The final decision has to be taken by United States and UK, because UK has always been a major ally of US all along, and UK has been, I would say, the frontman of United States in Europe for the last 20-30 years, and I'm sure the UK Prime Minister will bring some sense among the European leaders, and the European leaders will ultimately tell Zelensky that to follow whatever US will bring on the table for the peace.
And of course, and how obvious it is that it's not going to be pre-2014 borders as far as the Ukraine
No,
is concerned.
I think Russia is not going to talk about pre-2014 borders. They are going to, yes, they may talk about when this particular war 3 years ago started. This will be talked. I don't think that Russia is going to even negotiate on going back to the previous
So do we
demarcation.
understand that Ukrainians are going to lose territory?
Yes,
Quite considerably.
this is quite obvious, but I'm
So
sure
what
that
the situation stands right now on the ground is going to
is
be
going to be like this. And you talked about the guarantees. You know what President Donald Trump was giving Zelensky at that moment on Friday, what he wanted to sign, that America wanted to invest in the mineral extraction in Ukraine. So he openly said, and even
and he openly said that you need minerals, rare earth minerals, and we need your security.
yes,
So
he said this.
don't you think if this is such a big desire and what the US at this particular point in time requires from Ukraine, so Ukraine could have been in a better position to make any sort of a deal?
Yes, Ukraine right now is in a better position. If they make this deal, then they have to get the security guarantees from US. Because if US will send their people to extract minerals from there, then US will have to make sure the security of Ukraine. So the Ukraine security will not be given by France or by UK. The Ukraine security has to be ensured by US because it was the US which has been supporting this war all along. Now it is the onus comes on US to end this war, because if we see the Biden administration, whether it was wrong or right, we will not get into that discussion. But since last 10-15 years, we have been seeing that it is only US which had been pushing Europe to support Ukraine, and Ukraine had been getting all sorts of help, whether it is in shape of US aid, whether it is shape of money, whether it is in the shape of any kind of material help, they have been getting from US. So right now it is only US which can guarantee peace in Ukraine, which can give guarantee for the peace in Ukraine, and which can talk with Russia, because Russia is not ready to talk with Europe. And also China is a big player in this. I'm sure that Chinese must have been playing a background role.
Point you talked of China's role in this particular whole equation. We saw Chinese authorities already propose a 12-point peace proposal. What about that? Do you think that that was welcomed by Russian President Vladimir Putin at that time also? So do you think, is there any chance of that peace proposal being considered, or any of its points being considered and implemented as far as?
Yes, China has been proposing, China and Brazil, they had proposed some kind of peace plan, the 12-point peace plan. And if we see what Donald Trump and President Putin had been talking, so most of the points which are put across by from the Russian side are the same points which were given by the Chinese. So Chinese are right now playing a silent diplomatic role in the complete process. And I'm sure that if President Trump goes for some kind of peace deal, China will definitely support it, because China has never been for any kind of war. And we have seen in the Security Council, again and again I'm giving you example of the Security Council, because that is one place where we can see the moods of the country. That is one place where we can see that how the superpowers are behaving. So we saw that China siding with US on the peace plan. We saw China voting for US. It is very rare that China, America and Russia having one stance in the UN in the Security Council. This is quite a, I would say, unprecedented thing and unusual, but welcomed by the allies of China, welcomed by almost every country which is part of United Nations.
Unfortunately, we're short of time. Mr. Kiani, your closing comments. Do you see any of those points by Chinese authorities of that 12-point peace proposal also be taken up if any sort of a future deal to end this particular crisis in Ukraine comes up?
My own feeling is, China's rise has always been peaceful, and China has always been trying to end this war in Ukraine. I do not know, but the Americans will look at it. But at the same time, I say this as a realist approach, the Americans would decide in discussion with Putin to end the war. They might take into consideration few points what the Chinese have said, because the Chinese, as a country, as a rising economic power, cannot be ignored. But at the end of the day, it was the American, the Russian who would decide as to what, when, and where the war would end, and what Ukraine will get the end of it.
Right, Mr. Shahid MG, Kiani, Foreign Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Khalid, Taimur, Akram, expert in international relations, joining us in the studio. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, Take good care of yourselves.